Okay, welcome back to another author interview at Crystal Lake. And today our guest is Del Howison. I hope I pronounced that right.
You did.
And I'm going to let him introduce himself. So take it away.
Hello, I'm Del Howison, author of What Fresh Hell Is This? and owner of Dark Delicacies in Burbank, California, with my wife Sue, which has been around 30 years and is properly known as the home of horror.
Cool. So tell everybody about the book. What Fresh Hell Is This? Great title, by the way.
Yeah, a lot of people think that title came from Shakespeare, and it really didn't. There's a line in Faust that's similar to it, but it actually came from Dorothy Parker. She said that, and I'm a big fan of Dorothy Parker. So,
Yeah, me too.
and every morning, the older I get, every time I get out of bed, I think of the title because there's a new acre pain or something, right?
Definitely.
This is like my 10th, 11th book, all different kinds of books. I edited 4 anthologies, written novels, but during my career so far, I've written a lot of short stories. And they've been in magazines and anthologies scattered all around. And I thought it might be nice to gather them up and put them in one place. So this is a retrospective of my work through 2023. Uh, Started in 2024 on, we've already got short stories. So maybe I'll be thinking of doing a second book. We'll see.
Okay, so what are your inspirations for short stories?
Well, in this case, these are all my dark tales. And although I do occasionally take a break from writing long form or essay or something and use a short story as a brain release, because it's a whole different process.
Mm.
Most of the stuff, I'll have somebody get in touch with me and say, "Can you do a short story for our anthology?" And the theme is. And if I don't happen to have a drawer story, which is one you've written and then you put it away until you decide to work on it some more, you find a place for it, I'll write to the theme and go that way.
Yeah, writing to themes can be fun. I've done that once or twice myself.
It can also be as we say, a brain fart because you can go, man, I just don't know where to start on this.
Yeah, I've had that happen too. Okay, so as you said, this is a collection of dark supernatural horror stories. So tell us, what can the readers expect? What kind of characters are in there? What jump scares and the good stuff?
All right. Well, not wanting to give away anything in particular, I can say that the focus is not that much supernatural as it is horror. I tend to lean towards the horror in real life or something that could be real life, although there are a few monsters hidden around in there in different places. But I really like dealing with stories about the human condition, exploring people's actions and psyche for whatever reason, putting normal people, like you and I, in abnormal situations and seeing how they react.
Okay, so when you're writing a story, even a novel, short story, whatever, so what comes first for you? The idea, a character, the first line, or is it something else?
Once in a while, it's a beginning and ending comes to me. I'm not an outliner. I'm a pantser, as they say. I fly by the seat of my pants and let the story come, and then I go back and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite. But in most cases, it's probably the first line that comes to me, and the story grows from that particular thing. I hate writing. Let's start there. I hate writing, but I love editing my writing. And the truth is, you can't edit a blank page. So I like getting it out there. That's the real fight for me, is getting it out there. Um, but I like sitting down with it, putting it away for maybe a week, coming back to it, and going, did I write that? And why did I write that? Fixing it, changing it. Usually it's on the second or third draft that I start putting the color in, start putting the mood and the tone in. Somebody once said this, and I find it true. The first draft is for you, and the second draft on is for the reader. So I like getting that story for me out of the way and then going in and editing on it.
Yeah, I'm with you on there. The first draft's always harder than the editing process for me too.
They always suck. There's not a good first draft out
No.
there.
So, what's your favorite scene or story in the book?
I have a couple of favorites. There's one that's written about 1930, takes place in the South, has a lot to do with curses and conjure woman and a wife giving birth to a child that she doesn't want, but the husband has wanted it all along. So there's a curse that's put on. I just loved that setting of the old South. And it's not old, it's like 1900s South, early 1900s. But I really got into the mood and the texture of the story, and I really, really loved that. And then in a more modern setting, I have a story about a female truck driver stuck in a blizzard that came across because my mother knew I was working on something, and she said, "Hey, I found this article," and she sent it to me. And so that one's actually the basis of it is a true story. And then I did my editing to it and wrote the story.
Yeah, true stories are often good inspirations.
It's a good diving board to jump from. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm currently working on a horror novel where it's very loosely based on a true story as well.
Well, hopefully it's more than what like the film studios do. They'll go inspired by a true story, and as close as they get is there was once a man that owned a dog.
Well, it's actually inspired by the story of a mysterious disappearance of lighthouse keepers from an island in Scotland. It's a big, and there was of course speculation about ghost stories and
Sure.
supernatural, and anyway, but so I took the disappearance of the lighthouse keepers and sort of pulled it over to my neck of the woods in Nova Scotia and ran with it. So
Oh, I like that kind of stuff. Because you can make all kinds of suppositions in your writing as you
mm,
go along and really play with it.
yeah. So, what was the hardest scene or story for you to write in the collection?
Boy, that's a good one. I think we at least have to come back to the. It wouldn't have been a drawer story because those come when I'm clearing my mind out and want to write a story or something jumps on me, and then I write a story from it, put it away inside the drawer. So it would have to be a themed story that then I'm going, what the hell am I going to write for this theme? And I think it may be the story in there that I wrote for a charity book that was a charity for reptile and dog rescue, two organizations that the monies went both ways. And he has a lot of name writers in there that people would recognize, but all of them had to feature an animal. And I had not written a short story featuring an animal strongly and didn't know what to do. It took me about a week and a half, 2 weeks. And finally, I hit on the fact that I live in California and our state flag has the big bear on it, the golden grizzly bear there. And I decided to write a story about that bear.
Oh, that sounds cool. That's something to look forward to in the book. So, how long have you been writing?
Well, my first short story that I ever wrote was a junior in high school. It didn't get published till about 20 years later. But when I went into the service, I was in the Army, I went to journalism school. And so my first writings have all been journalistic or essays for things like Stars and Stripes, which is the English speaking newspaper in Europe or places like that. It all started with photojournalism and then grew out of that. Except I had that one story in junior high, stayed in there, probably got rewritten more times than any story I've had, but has probably been reprinted more times than any story.
Mm. Oh, that's cool. You must have some interesting stories about your days in journalism, though.
Oh, we had a good time. At least I didn't have to go out in the field and sleep in tents because back in those days, I could say I have to go into the dark room and take care of printing some film and some photos. I spent most of my time, I was in Army aviation. So I spent most of my time flying in helicopters, taking pictures of the colonel and some German official shaking hands. We called them grip and grin shots. And then I'd have to go back and print them up. And I got left alone. It was a perfect choice for me.
Okay, so how? Why did you decide to write in the horror genre? What is it about horror that attracts you?
I grew up in a very strict Christian family. So I was, aware of it's almost the Lovecraftian horror, the ancient old ones where we had in Christianity, you have all of the stories from the Old Testament and a vengeful God and do this, don't do that, and that kind of thing. And I think that restriction growing up like that kind of pointed me in that direction. I have a kind of a deep seated love for hellfire and brimstone, although I don't write like on that giant canvas that Lovecraft wrote on. I like if I get an assignment for something that would be on a big canvas, say a science fiction story, then I try to do what Ray Bradbury taught me, which was take the big canvas and bring it down to a personal level on that big canvas and write about the people. Because if the people aren't anyone that the reader cares about, it doesn't matter what the big canvas is.
Yeah, Ray Bradbury was definitely a master at that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's one of my favorites. So, what do you enjoy most about writing horror fiction?
Probably the fact that it can be used for just about anything you want. It can be used for allegory. It can be used for racial tensions. You can write things to get a point across if you want to make a political point, and do it with zombies and not. George Romero did that very
Mm,
well in his films, and not get hung up by some group going, "You offended us," or anything else. You can use them as the fall guy, so to speak. And also that horror, having owned the horror store for 30 years, horror really reflects the current times. And when, for instance, when the AIDS crisis hit, there was a rise in vampire stories. And I'm sure it came directly off of the news. People's heads were there. Whenever we're in war, there is more horror written because people feel a sense of loss of control. And when you're reading a book or watching a movie or something, you can walk out of the movie or close the book or whatever. When the 911 thing happened in New York, the rise of the zombie story went crazy. Walking Dead came not too long after that. A lot of things in print, a lot of zombie books came out. And that, if you look at that film of those people coming out of the cloud of ashes, covered all in that white ash and stuff, it's the zombie story. So I like that it is not an old or dying kind of genre. It's something that um, very easily reflects the current times and can be used to make a point about anything. There's one story in the anthology that makes fun of reality shows. So, but it's still a horror story. It's a
mhm.
monster story. So, I like the versatility in horror.
Yeah, it definitely has a versatility to it. So, what's the hardest part of writing horror fiction for you?
I don't think there is a hard part in writing horror fiction that isn't just a hard part in writing fiction. I don't
Yeah,
think it's the
that's fair
genre.
enough.
Yeah, I think anything I run into is I don't believe in writer's block. I don't think writer's block exists. I think you can get stuck on a scene or something like that you really want to figure it out. But you don't really have writer's block because you could say, okay, I'm going to quit writing on that until that hits me. And like I do, then go write a short story, go write an article, go write something else, and it'll keep your mind free. It's not that you have writer's block; it's that you have scene block,
Mm.
and you have to. A lot of times, you have to walk away from it to actually get the thought. It's like the two of us talking, and you go, "What was that actor's name that starred in?" And neither of us can think of it. And then at 3 o'clock in the morning, you wake up and go, "Oh my God, I have to call him on the phone."
Yeah, I've had that happen. Anyway, yeah, and, character block is also another one that I've
Yeah.
had to, yeah, when
You
your
can block
characters.
on any area of your writing, and I think we've all done that. But that's not actually writer's block. That's
No,
just the
that's just
frailties of our minds.
that's just you having no idea what comes next.
That's right. And I'm a pantser. I don't outline my novels or the closest to outlining that I do is when I'm editing an anthology. I might have an arc I want it to go into or something, as the stories progress, maybe something like that, but I'm not writing them. But as a writer, I don't outline at all.
Okay, so who are some of your favorite authors?
Well, Bradbury was a good place to start.
Yeah, he's
Uh,
always a good place to start.
a friend of mine who's now passed, Richard Matheson, I think was one of the masters. Peter Straub. Um, they were all giants. They're all gone. The current writers, like Joe Lansdale, I think is one of the masters out there. There's a lot of good novel writers that are just coming through right now that have one or two novels. In short stories, there's a what is that guy's name? Is Eric Eric Larson, Eric whatever, and he writes very slim books, and they're usually short stories, but he's got a great perspective.
Okay, so tell us about some of the other books you've written.
Mercedes Yardley is another
Oh,
writer
yes,
who I really,
definitely.
really like. Yeah.
Okay,
Sorry, go ahead.
so tell us about some of the other books you've written.
Well, I did an anthology, co-edited an anthology with Jeff Gelb called Dark Delicacies, and there were 3 volumes in that. We won a Stoker for those. Um, I did one with Jonas Cease and Clive Barker called Midian Unmade, which was all based on characters from Clive Barker books and um, what happens after the book ends. It was all short stories commissioned about each one of the characters, and that was a fun one. I've known Clive for a long, long time, so I have to put him on that list of good writers too. But Clive is very. I've gone more that way than I have gone Bradbury esque. I'm like the horror in What Fresh Hell Is This is a little more in your face. And Bradbury really wasn't an in your face writer. A lot of times he was touched with golden nostalgia of childhood, you know, like in Something Wicked This Way Comes or in The Velt from the Illustrated Man, stuff like that. But Clive's always kind of been like right there if you want to read something that's going to hit you that way.
Yeah, well, that's the good thing about horror. You can have the Ray Bradbury horror and the Clive Barker horror and enjoy it all.
In fact, you really can. And the very first Dark Delicacies anthology begins with a Bradbury story and ends with a Barker.
Okay, so what's your next project? What can readers expect from you coming in the future?
Like you, I'm about halfway through the first draft of a new novel, which is not based on truth, but it's about a dowser, from
Mm.
around 1900, 1910. But instead of finding water or oil like most dowsers did. He finds bodies and souls.
Ooh, that's a cool twist on that. I like
So
that.
yeah, so I'm having fun with that one right now, and I'm not under a deadline with anybody, which is good or bad. Which means it's like all of us do now. It's speculative writing, right? But I think it'll sell. It's got a nice kick to it. And speaking of Clive, he did the foreword for "What
Mm,
Fresh Hell Is This?" the current short story collection I have
yeah, so that's another reason to go buy the book, people.
out.
Okay, so I think we'll wrap the interview up here. I'd like to thank you for being a guest today. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you. It was lovely being here. I'd love to talk longer sometime. We'll meet
Uh,
at a convention.
yeah, maybe we will. So you can find the link to the book in the description. And that's it for this episode. So bye for now.